Being 113, we'll open the Finance Division 2 meeting. And tell you what an idiot I am. We'll start right there. I'm embarrassed to do this in front of Representative McGuire, who's going to think, Jesus, you're a chair of this committee. So we have 4 bills on the docket today, and it's the first 3 that we've already dealt with in full finance. So we can't do anything else with them anyway. So we'll be skipping the first 3. And the 4th one we will talk about, and that is 781, HB 781, which is related to cell phones. Is there anybody here that wants to talk about cell phones? And I apologize. Like I said, I totally blew it.
On the bright side, we are ahead of schedule.
So this one we want to pass. So go ahead, Mr. Landrigan.
So sticking with 781, this one, we did have a work session on the 18th where we had an 8-0 retain. So I think the committee would want to consider reconsideration, and then you can take a different action if you so chose. The 18th.
Representative Popovich?
I may as well get the ball rolling by making a motion to reconsider our vote on vote to retain HB 781.
Is it second?
Can I ask? Oh,
Go ahead.
what's the basis for reconsideration? What's changed?
Oh, well, I'll let you explain.
We just got, we talked about the budget more, and some of the decisions that we made earlier may be ripe for reconsideration in light of all the, new budgetary information and all the work we've done since.
Second?
Because I would need to know what the next motion is supposed to be so that we can decide whether or not we are happy
My
to
plan is to make a motion to OTP once the reconsideration is complete.
So we have a motion and a second, and any discussion? You're good?
Who was the second?
Representative Bean.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Sorry,
I'm
I'll wait.
vice chair and clerking.
You're doing both.
So
I'll wait. Yeah.
basically, the discussion is, since I made the motion, again, it's a good bill. It seems to be supported by everybody. It would help if we would, send it to the House floor to be passed on to the Senate and, taken from there.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you. I remember when we had this on the House floor once, but my understanding was this was, the intent was that the concept of this would be included in the budget, but there wouldn't be any funding for it.
Well,
Am I mistaken?
on one point, yes, on one point, no. Yes, we plan to include in the budget as well. But as far as the funding goes, the House stripped it out. And they basically took out the clause about grants and just basically said, make a policy.
Oh, so that was done by the first committee?
Yes, and we passed it through the House as amended with that.
Thank you. I didn't catch that.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll just do a show of hands. All in favor?
Sure. Yeah, it's, no, I don't want a roll call. I'm happy with a show of hands.
Okay. Any opposed? Actually, Representative Weiler, hold on 1 second. Do we any more voting in the near future?
Well, we have one more motion.
Yeah.
No, I know on this.
For this bill specifically, you'll have that OTP. You talked about that motion, and then from there we can move into the budget work session and the tracking packet and get into votes when you're
There's a lot
ready.
more votes there too. Okay, yeah. So it's up to you, Representative Weiler, which you want to do. So before you leave, yeah, we're going to do that right next. So Representative Popovich for a motion when you have time.
So, given that we just reconsidered, I would like to make a motion to OTP HB 781.
Second? Representative Bean? Oh, well, thank you. Any further discussion? No? Okay. Let me know when you're ready and I'll call for a vote. All right. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Okay.
And any opposed? Passes unanimously. I think we'll survive. If we can't, we'll come get you. Division 1, right? Perfect. So I guess you can join us at the center table now, Mr. Landergan.
Yeah. Lucky now. I've been the clerk last term. I know how it goes. Oh, I already.
Shocking.
Mickey, I already have this. No worry, I'd rather have one for the people in the audience. Thank you. I can handle 2, but not 3.
I'm sorry, whenever you're ready.
All right. So you have a brand new tracking pack in front of you, which you'll notice is much bigger than the previous days. So in here is now quite a few new amendments that have come up since our last meeting on Wednesday. Plus some other House Bill 1 changes and everything we can go over. We've got the afternoon here. Mr. Chair, I don't know if it's easiest for you just to either go straight down the list here, or if you would rather me try to stay to subjects, similar subjects, and go roll that way. It's up to the committee.
I mean, personally, I'm into just following on the list, but people have a different.
Okay. So a good segue into the first item here, the First Amendment of House Bill 2, pages 12 to 13, section 17 to 18 is the governor's proposal on the cell phone use policy. So on page 11 of the packet, you have amendment number 1190H, which is the same language you just adopted and recommended for House Bill 781. What this amendment would do is put both policies in House Bill 781 as you just passed, and then also have it included in House Bill 2.
Thank you.
Page is that in the
Right,
packet?
right here.
11.
11.
And then I'll let everyone know, step 2 of this we'll get to next, which is the funding. The governor included $1 million for this in House Bill 1, and we'll get to that next if you want. I can show you where we would make that change to.
No, I just have a question. So if we are, once we replace 17 and 18, haven't we deleted the funding section?
No, the funding is in House Bill 1, not in House Bill 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She mentions the grants in Part B, which is gone, but then there's also actual money in HB1. Okay, got it. So any discussion on moving into HB1? Representative Popovich.
I mean, given we've just discussed that in a bill, I don't see any reason not to make a motion to adopt Amendment 1190H to HB2.
Is there a second? Representative Bean? Let me know when you're ready.
Good to go.
Meeting with the most writing. Okay. All those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed?
7-0.
Passes unanimously? Sorry. Oh, wait. 7. Representative McGuire, I'm sorry, did you have a question or a point or?
No, I was just voting yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the amendment passes 7-0.
So if you want to do the funding portion of it next, there's 2 places. You can see it on page 4 of the tracking packet. Item number 38, I have it listed on there. This is included in County Unit 4076 on page 1178 of the governor's budget document. And this is an education trust fund appropriation.
Which line was it on page 4?
38.
38.
You're on, that's not the
38.
same page.
Well, that's 5. Thank you. It's been a long day. Yeah, thanks. Any discussion on this? Okay. Somebody want to make a motion over here while he's writing?
You do it.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No, that's good to know. So I just keep looking this way. Perfect. That's good. No, that works.
So,
Representative
which
Popovich,
amendment were we at?
line 38 on page 4.
Oh, well, that's the,
My God, I right
Page
for
4,
a
the numbers on
moment.
the bottom for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, so then we are looking at the adopting the changes to HB1 as described on page 4 of the current tracking field in line 38, modifying the AU 406 by decreasing it by 1 million.
A second. Representative Bean seconds.
That will be a longer break.
Take your time.
Good to go.
All in favor? Raise your hand. Any opposed? 7-0.
Next item on pages 39 through
Excuse
40.
me? What about line 30? The school cell phone policy?
Yep, so those bills were carried on there, Representative, as just a reminder that we had retained bills. So by adopting the amendment that we did in House Bill 2 and then making that motion to make the reduction in House Bill 1, we're covered for the everything relative to the cell phone. But yes, that it is included. We did
Thank
list
you.
them there as just so we wouldn't forget about the bills we retained.
Okay.
Excellent catch.
So just so everyone's aware, for the tracking sheet for the next time is I'll shade out that row 30 and just make it clear that we reduce that. So it does appear on there a couple times, yes.
Thank you.
Next item, back to page 1, pages from House Bill 2, 39 through 40, sections 65 through 69, the VLTs, the video lottery terminals. Representative Sweeney's latest and greatest amendment, 1163H, is included in your packet starting on page 13. I think at this point, I would recommend reading, getting ready for that. We've invited the Lottery Commission in at 10 o'clock on Monday morning to walk us through it and talk revenue estimates. If you have any questions or discussions today, we can get those out, but I don't think we have much to do with that today.
Representative Hacken Phillips.
I think after speaking with some of the advocates representing the charitable organizations, they're a little concerned about the decrease in proportion of their cut from this amendment. So I'm just letting you know that's out there. Thank you.
Representative Popovich.
So this is just an informational topic for now, but having received the same emails, I think that they are looking at the percentage decrease, but did not have the time to consider the increase in volume that we expect that we hope will basically bring them to the same place. Obviously, with no certainty at this moment in time, we're waiting for Monday, but the hope is that once we go through all that information, hopefully they will be less stressed out.
Just so you're aware, they understand that there will be more net dollars across the board for everyone with the change, but they are concerned about the decrease in the percentage of the cut. So yes, they have calculated and understand the difference.
But if I may just follow up very briefly, just to better understand the concerns, did they say more than that? Because it would seem that for me to be concerned, if I were a charity, right, which I'm not, I would be concerned if my funding was reduced. Are they understanding they may get a bit more money, but they want even more because of the percentage? Or could you just summarize what the concerns are? Because I only got the whole percentage thing. I didn't get
Yeah.
more.
So Daniel, I used to sit on Ways and Means, and this is a perennial concern that the charitable organizations have thought that they were cut out of the equation too much before. And so seeing that continue to decrease just represents the argument that they had already presented before. So yes.
I appreciate the background. Thank you so much.
Representative Murray.
Thank you. I think they well understand both sides of the equation. And I think even on Monday, the issue will remain because we are not going to know what those revenues are until those revenues are there. And so there's, you could say, well, they'll understand that there'll be more money. We don't know what there is going to be until it happens. And so their concern isn't going to be alleviated. Maybe never, and maybe if there is an increase, they'll be fine. But we're not going to know any more on Monday, really. We'll have some more estimates, but we're not going to.
Okay. So are we ready for a motion?
Well, I thought we were waiting for the testimony.
Monday,
Yeah,
right,
we'll-
right. Okay, so moving on. That's what those are the words I'm looking for.
Next item, page 42 of House Bill 2, Section 70, relative to the Northern Shield or the Granite Shield program in the Department of Safety. This is the drug enforcement money that we have allocated for the last couple budgets to the Department of Safety for overtime for state and county local law enforcement, for substance abuse enforcement. The governor had recommended using the opioid abatement trust fund for this, and this supports that position. The funding is in House Bill 1. This is the enabling legislation to allow that for the biennium only, that fund can be utilized for this program.
Representative Popovich.
I just wanted to check, given that the funding is already in HB1, I would feel that probably we want to adopt the language if nobody has major concerns. And then if at some point we decide the funding has to go, we can obviously take the language out. But right now we seem to be out of sync, so I'd like to bring us in sync.
Representative Murray.
And I think we oppose using the opioid abatement trust fund for law enforcement.
Any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
I appreciate that not everybody's comfortable, but I do still think that we have to bring the two in sync. And while I understand the concerns with using that fund, I have even greater concerns about using the general fund for this. So I'm gonna make a motion to adopt amendment 1215H to HB2.
Do I have a second? Representative Bean. Let me know when you're ready.
Is it strange that I have to check the date all the time because I cannot believe it's March 21st? I'm ready.
Can we do this one show of hands, or do you want to do something different?
I record, by the way, I record the yeas and the nays individually on a show of hands too. We just save some time.
No, she says that's fine. So all those in favor, raise your hand. 4. And opposed? 3.
Next item on House Bill 2, page 55, section 121, we have an amendment that was part of, it was one of the, I think we have 5 amendments in here that were Department of Education requests that we walked through with Caitlin a couple of days ago. This is the first one that makes technical changes in how the determination of charter school grants are made and the timing. So if you go to page 20, you'll see the suggested changes that we walked through on Wednesday with the department.
Any
There's no-
discussion?
this makes no change, sorry, this makes no change to the amount of grants or anything. It's technical and timing.
Did we skip page 19? The dual and concurrent?
We approved that one already a previous
I'm-
day.
I'm sorry,
I'm
thank you, we
including,
did.
I'm including
Got it,
previous action
sorry.
just so you have a complete record of everything here.
Any discussion? Representative Popovich?
I mean, I don't remember a lot of, concern about this. I recall it as just a cleaning up the language with no huge impact or no meaningful impact on anything other than avoiding some unclarity, lack of clarity in the law. So I would like to make a motion to adopt Amendment 1153H to HB2.
And do I have a second? Representative Bean?
Okay. Good to go.
All right. All those in favor, signify by raising your hands. Okay. And any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, so the next sections of House Bill 2 that we still have to take care of, but it won't be today. I'll just remind everyone, section 123 on page 55, which is relative to adequacy grants. There's a section in House Bill 2 that is relative to when that October estimate is put out there, the department would not deviate from that unless, because there's typically never really much of a change from that to the final, unless an egregious enough difference was noticed, at which time the school district would have an opportunity to go to the state board to get that remedied. I'm holding that one for now because we still have to decide what we're doing with overall ed funding, and I didn't want to have a contradiction in any RSAs with that amendment versus what's in there now. So that's on hold. If there's no questions on that, I can jump to the next one.
Representative Popovich?
Not a question, just adding one more detail for everybody who's in the room. This amount is also trued up based on the effective stuff at the end of the year. So the worst harm a school could suffer if the number is off from October to November is a delay until, the true up at the end of the year, which really shouldn't be material for the kind of changes we get. So I understand that we technically need to hold on to it to ensure we don't have conflicts when we adopt language. So.
Next, page 63 of House Bill 2, section 149 is relative to the statutory use of E911 funds and relative to state police radio communications. That's also, we haven't taken any action on that to this point, and I do not have an amendment in this packet.
So my take on this, unless somebody tells me otherwise, is we're not going to, I agree there's a problem and there needs to be an appropriate allocation, I believe, between E911 use of this system and state police and other uses of this system. I don't think we're going to get that this year. And I said, maybe we consider this as, maybe we have some experts here that are interested in this that could consider this for future legislation.
I certainly understand that position, but I do think after speaking with Pete today that we do have a reasonable option to, after speaking with folks this morning, I do think it's possible to remove about 50% from the 911 surcharge fund to be allocated directly through general funds to the state police communications line item. So essentially, my understanding is that a fair analysis between federal requirements of, diversions of 911 surcharge funding is that, there's several things that we're currently paying for that we shouldn't be. But there are some real, the nexus that I talked about in committee the other day, there are legitimate uses of the fund as well. So in speaking with some experts in the field, they really believe that like a conservative estimate between what is currently being paid for and what is actually used for non-emergency police radio communications is approximately 50%, like a split down the middle. And they thought by splitting the difference that it would be like a true up for the state moving forward. So while keeping, a good chunk of it in the 911 fund, it could remain, and then just allocating the rest where it should appropriately be under the state police communications accounting unit.
So essentially a 50-50 allocation.
Yes, 50-50, and I am wrong. Actually, it's easier to just change. You don't actually have to change the HB1 like line items as you see them, but it's the funding source would just be split 50-50. So instead of it all coming out of the 911 fund as it currently does in AU 4001, I believe, it would be 50% 911 dedicated funds and 50% general funds.
Does that make sense?
Does.
Does. And any other?
As long as the committee is comfortable with that, I think that is, without further legislation, I think that is the most appropriate move at the moment. My only recommendation to make sure that that change reflects HB2 would be to remove some of the language from HB2 in that specific section until a legislative fix can come with actual line items according to federal policy of what's appropriate to use those 911 funds and what's not appropriate, so that the department will have a little more direction in the future. And that really is a year 2 bill.
So you think that's necessary as well?
I think deleting the section from
No, I got that part.
Oh.
But assuming we do all that you said.
Oh, yeah.
You think it's still going to be necessary to do another round of legislation?
I think another round of legislation would be, it is the federal recommendation to have legislation at a state level that delineates what charges are appropriate. I can send you the task force recommendations that I received today. Because apparently this is a huge problem across the country. It's not just here in New Hampshire that people divert funds from 911 surcharges. So there is an actual federal task force recommendation list of things that are appropriate and things that are not appropriate. And it clearly applies to here in New Hampshire.
Would it make sense just wait and do that all at once, or do you think it makes sense to do both?
My recommendation would be to fix HB1, HB2 now so that the biennium is set. And then to delineate the specific qualifications next year so that there's specific guidance.
And you'll take that on, I assume.
I would be happy to take that on.
Representative Popovich.
Oh, I did want to
I'm
just
sorry, go
mention
ahead.
too before we wrap this up. Mickey, you and I were talking about possibly year 1 versus year 2 changes for the biennium, and I'm trying to remember exactly what that thread of thought was. That it's possible, I'm sorry, the effective dates probably are the issue.
So to just make sure everyone understands, Representative Hacken-Phillips' proposal here at first would be about $3 million over the biennium to make this accounting unit a 50-50 split. As far as timing, we did discuss potentially having this change perhaps happen for year 1, but with it repealing or reverting back in year 2. So it would almost force the hand at legislation in the next session, because otherwise in fiscal 27, the department would have to figure out something because the law wouldn't align with the budget or allowable use of E911 funds. I think that might be a little bit clunkier of a way to do it, but it is an option. But if the the committee was interested in looking into just seeing what the cost would be 50-50 for that accounting unit, like I said, it's $3 million over the biennium.
Just one moment. So, Representative Hacken Phillips, where are you with that?
Yeah. My preference would be to do the first part, fix HB1, fix HB2 now, and then follow up next year with legislation with the actual delineations. But
So I get all that, but did you want to take up? I think what he said was do exactly what you said, except only do it for the first year, repeal the second year. Is that what you were saying, Mr. Landrigan?
I mean, I'm not sure that's really effective
Yeah,
tool, but
I mean, it's
it was just an option, I
it
guess.
was I was
more or
I was
less.
providing some options that may have been different cost options, but it would be an awkward way to pass the budget for this section to say you're good for year one, but you have uncertainty in year two, and it would require legislation. It was just something that we were discussing. I think something that is a more stable budget for this component of Department of Safety and E911 area would be to do the 50-50 split of general and E911 and remove the section from House Bill 2, like Representative Hacken Phillips suggested.
Okay, Representative Popovich.
May I ask how long have we been doing this practice?
It started in 2012, is my understanding, and then it's been kind of on and off, but essentially since 2012.
I'm asking because obviously we need to clean it up, but I'd like to clean it up properly. And given that we are looking for rather scarce general funds here, I don't know where I'm going to find 3 million for this. I think
No,
it
yeah.
may.
So let me just. It's 3 million total for the biennium,
Yes.
and 50% of that would be generally funded. So
Right.
it's 1.5.
But we're still looking at 1.5 in general funds over this very, very brutal biennium. And since we've been doing this for over a decade now, would personally think that we could let it be for now with the hope that, somebody will introduce a second year bill to fix this and clean it up properly. But I'm not sure how much I want to take the 1.5 million over the biennium hit right now with a temporary patch rather than a permanent solution.
Are there other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to remind the
Oh, I'm
committee.
sorry, Representative Hacken Phillips.
This is a dedicated fund, and once you codify that you're okay with an agency tapping into dedicated funds to pay for their operational costs, you're really setting a precedent for other departments to do the same thing. And I would really, I understand the budget constraints that we're all under right now. I just feel like you're basically stamping your approval on that. And I really think that's not untenable in this situation.
So, Representative Murray.
Yeah, can you clarify? We have been doing this in the past, but doesn't this language here, as you say, codify it? So that we're not just continuing the practice, we're actually putting a stamp of approval on the practice, which would make it more difficult later on. Am I right in describing it that way?
Yeah, and I would just say, Mr. Chair, that if it is the majority's opinion that they should not correct this funding mechanism this year, then I would plead with the committee to at least change the language in HB2, because that is really the problem.
So well, hang on a second. So I have a question with and either one of you can answer it. With the proposal, what does happen to this section 149?
So, if I may, what would happen is you would delete section 149
Okay.
and then fund
Okay.
an estimated split of 50-50, because we don't know the exact functions of what's what.
Right.
But you can start with 50-50 and do half general, half E911 in that accounting unit.
So deleting it,
It makes
then,
it, yeah.
and then doing the 50-50 thing or whatever ratio we choose, is better than just deleting it.
Yeah, if you just delete it and don't provide general funds, that would call into question. Now you're really saying that, no, you can't use E911 funds for those state police radio communications. And then the budget would basically not have any allowable funds to fund those functions.
I mean, it seems to me to be a good middle, Representative Hecken Phillips' approach seems to be a good middle of the road approach for getting us over the hump here until she so willingly puts in the legislation next year. Representative Popovich?
No, I don't really feel comfortable, but I will follow the will of the committee on this one.
Representative Kelly?
Thank you. Knowing this, now that it's been revealed, I agree that we didn't know it before. Now we do. And if you go ahead and pass it this way, it's a problem. And now we know it's a problem. When you didn't know it, it's one thing, but now that you're aware of it, you need to do something.
So I know you told me you always want me to look this way, but in this particular one, might I be able to look the other way for a motion?
Well, I'm not sure we can make a motion yet because we don't have the language. But I'll turn to Mickey.
If it's okay for everyone here, we can take this motion. I can point you to where it is in the budget. You can be very clear. I can state what the motion is. The House Bill 2 change is quite easy. It's just deleting section 149. So the amendment's quite easy. If you go to page 406 in your budget, it's accounting unit 4001.
Oh, yeah, I'll throw it yours. Oh, you don't have your No, it's okay. If you're going to pull it up, I'll look at it.
Would we need two different motions because we're modifying HB1 and HB2?
You can, or you can do it as a joint motion, and I would understand what the will of the committee is. It's your call.
I'm just,
Yep.
I haven't clerked in a while. Whether we need one or two motions because we're changing HB1 and HB2, Mr. Landigan indicated he's fine with one joint motion because they go together anyway. And but then I will need to.
So I'll tee up a potential motion for the clerk to potentially write it down.
It's
So
4001.
4001.
So on page, if you go
Page
to
406.
Yeah. If you go to page 406 of the big budget book, you'll see the total agency income in fiscal 26 and 27 respectively is about 2.9 million and about $3 million. So having those amounts to be half general, half would be about a $3 million increase over the biennium. And then so the total funding for this area would be the same. It's just the color of the money shifts from 100% E911 to 50% E911 in general.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
if there is no further discussion, I don't want to stop it too soon. But I do feel really comfortable making a potential motion of first modifying HB1, page 406, accounting unit 4001, the communications section. If you look at the estimated source of funds, it's currently agency income, and the proposal would be to do a split 50-50 for fiscal year 2026 and 27 between agency income, which is currently the dedicated fund we've been talking about, and the other half of it would be source of general funds. And in combination with that HB1 fix, I would turn to page, page 63 of HB2, section 149, modifying the Safety Division of Emergency Services and Communications Enhanced 911 Systems Fund uses by deleting that section's language.
And for exact dollars, it's $1,440,431 in fiscal 26 and $1,479,220 in fiscal 7 for a total of $2,919,651.
2,900,000.
Yep, 2,919,651.
Is that the total revenue affected or the total revenue shifted?
That represents 50%. So for the biennium. So in total, it's a $3 million, just about $2.9 million general fund increase.
Okay, I will second that motion.
Let me know when you're ready. Are you?
Oh, I made a pending motion, but that's fine. I'm happy to make it official. And thank you for the second.
Then I will convert my pending second to an actual second.
Any further discussion?
I just wanted to thank the committee for their patience with me explaining the issue as it arose and for, I think, doing the right thing. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate all the work you put in, and I sure hope you follow through next year. I figure she will. She's a good attorney. All righty. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
All right. Moving on, the next section will also be something we'll talk about with the Lottery Commission on Monday. This was House Bill 2, page 72, section 179, relative to the increase of the maximum ticket price from $30 to $50. The next row down, pages 72 to 73, sections 180 to 183 are relative to various taxes splits. This will be also part of the Education Trust Fund. We've got to square all that up next week, so I'm expecting we'll have something relative to that on Monday. And that gets us through what's in House Bill 2 to this point. Now, jumping down, we do have quite a few brand new amendments on here, and we can get to those. The first one is on page 31 of this tracking document, amendment number 1156H. This was a Department of Education request that the Public School Infrastructure Commission, when they disperse grants, do not need to come and get fiscal approval to do so.
Representative Murray.
So the other ones that are preceding that are these ones that we've already dealt
Correct.
with? And so
Correct.
these are done and they're for our information.
Correct.
Thank you.
So we all know where we are?
31.
Page 31 of the packet, of Mickey's new packet.
Mickey, could you remind me where this is? Oh, it was not in HB2. These were the extra things they asked
These are
us
new
about. Okay,
sections at
thank
this
you.
point. We're not amending House Bill 2 from here on out in the package today.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? We're good? Okay. Do I have a motion? She wants me to look left, so I'm back looking left.
Sure. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt amendment 1156H to HB2.
Do I have a second? Representative Bean? Let me know when you're ready.
Ready?
All right. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-2 unanimously.
Trust Susan to miss the one day when we make motion after motion, sure.
That's what I was saying earlier.
But you got to dust off your old skills. Didn't you do this last time?
Well, doesn't mean that I volunteered quite for it, but yeah, no, we're good. Happy to help.
Mr. Landrigan?
The next two amendments relate to retained bills that we had. The first being House Bill 1, it's Amendment 1189H, which was House Bill 129 relative to evidence-based definition in public education. So this is something the full committee also retained, but it's considered here as possible inclusion in House Bill 2.
So I'd like to skip over this one. And the next one.
All right, so we'll skip. And that brings us to the next page. So on the top of page 2 of the packet, we have amendments 1167H and 1180H. Both relate to a computer science appropriation that was included in House Bill 2 from 2023. The first amendment here was language provided by the Department of Education that expands the use of some of those funds for the UNH VLAX proposal that Caitlin walked us through the other day, the department talked about. The second amendment, Amendment 1167H, 1180H on the next page, seeks to lapse all unremaining funds from that original $4 million appropriation back to the general fund effective at the end of this fiscal year, June 30, 25. And the estimate for how much is going to be remaining is $2.5 million. So with both of these, I think I would suggest doing one or the other. Both probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Representative Popovich?
I think that at this point in time, given the constraints in funding that we have, probably the more prudent course of action would be to pick Amendment 1180H and adopt it. And if through a miracle we discover that we can find more funds for this, wherever this ends up in a priority queue, I'd be happy to reconsider it next week. But for now, I'd like to make a motion to adopt 1180H so Mickey can adopt the tracking and update everything and see where we are after, on Monday.
Do I have a second? Representative Dean? Absolutely. Representative Murray?
Thank you. So the choice is, and help me with my narrative here, either implementing this computer science educator credential program to the tune of whatever is in the fund that's on the next page. So implementing it would use that money for that program. Not implementing it, this money in a few months would lapse back to the general fund. Right? Is that the story?
So for Amendment 1 and Amendment 2, yes. Doing nothing, this appropriation is non-lapsing in perpetuity, so that money would just stay on the books for those original intended purposes. So those are the options for the committee, yes.
And just letting it sit on the books doesn't do anything because there's no program
Yeah.
there for it to fund, basically.
To the extent that it's projected to still have $2.5 million from an original $4 million appropriation, it's not being expended at the clip, I guess, was anticipated 2 years ago, yes.
I think, yeah, with my understanding of that, I'm supportive of that kind of a program, but this does not necessarily seem like the right time to do. This seems a little messy, a little confusing. I would be happy for Department of Education to come back when they've pulled this together a little bit more formally. So I think I'm fine with 1180.
Other discussion? Representative Hackman Phillips?
I just, I will defer to the will of the division, of course. I just feel a little unprepared in voting on this at the moment. I just feel like we didn't hear about this. Really, did we talk about this when Caitlin was here the other day? I don't remember talking about.
Yeah, this was one of the 5 items she went through many items. This was one of the 5 that the committee was going to have me draft an amendment for.
I don't remember that. Usually I take good notes.
It is the end of the budget. My memory tends to be tricky here and there myself, so.
Remember the other one? It was like, we need you to change the language. That was this one? Or
There
you
was a
have to
few
fund
change
it?
the language. we have 5 that would change the language, so.
That one is a very easy recall as long as you're not overly specific, yes.
The original language was provided by the department in that agency draft House Bill 2 bigger document that I had yeah. So you'll see it in there with a brief explanation. Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah, this one or that one was something different relative to, yeah. There's no amendments in the package today relative to those. That was relative to the 10th grade assessment conversation.
It doesn't seem this is challenging to bring back when maybe the waters are calmer.
I would agree that this is not a controversial, issue to revisit when the funding would be available. It's just priority.
No problem. Are we all good? Any further discussion? We have a motion, right?
Yeah, we're good to vote.
Okay. So all those in favor, raise your hands, please. Any?
We're accepting one.
We are, the motion is to adopt amendment 1180H to HB2.
Any? Did I ask for opposed? Any opposed?
Well, I think we should revote because people were not sure.
No, that's fine.
We're good?
Yeah, we're fine.
Any opposed?
Oh, and you want us to skip
Any
those.
opposed? And nobody raised their hand, so. They got to be quick.
It's virtual. So this is the top line of page 2 that we're on.
Yep.
Yes. Second line, actually. Yes, we're killing. Mr. Landrigan.
On the next line down, Amendment 1213H is relative to Medicaid direct certification. It's an amendment for Representative Kelly. And I think it's on page 37 of the amendment packet.
Representative Kelly?
Thank you. So most of you on the committee are familiar with this program, I believe. I thought that maybe we had a member that was not familiar with it, but she isn't here. So anyway, so Medicaid Direct Certification is a pilot demonstration project through the USDA, which allows the Office of Medicaid to share data with the Department of Education through computer data matching for the sole purpose of certifying children who are eligible for free or reduced price school meals without families having to complete another form. As we know, some of us know anyway, that forms get lost in a backpack and they don't even get home. I don't know how that happens, but there's a bottomless pit there. They get misplaced, and for other reasons, the forms don't get returned back to school. So parents often don't know about the free and reduced lunch program or that they might qualify. Some families may start the school year economically stable, and then a parent may lose a job and their income decreases. They become eligible for the free and reduced lunch program, but are unaware that families may apply for the program throughout the year, not just at the start of the school year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. In the past, the Medicaid Direct Certification, which is MDC, I might just swing over to MDC, has been opposed in New Hampshire for two reasons. The first is that there were concerns about privacy rights of families who might be on the Medicaid program but might not want their children directly enrolled in free or reduced lunch. That program has been solved by the amendment with language that begins on line 11 of the amendment, sort of a little bit halfway through that line. It says participants shall only be opted into such program if the participants consent on their application. So that takes care of the privacy issue. The second reason has been the cost. Medicaid Direct Certification doesn't cost much on its own. The state is already doing data matching for the SNAP and the TANF and some other programs. New Hampshire's state school funding formula uses a school's enrollment in free and reduced price school meals as the poverty measure to determine the differential aid at the that the school district gets from the state. And I think you all know what that formula is. I won't go through that. Rough projections show that there may be as many as 10,500 children currently enrolled in Medicaid who are not enrolled in free and reduced meals. So the worry has been that all those kids, if they were now enrolled in free and reduced lunch, which is very unlikely, but we'll use that, that the state would have to pay districts substantially more. But this amendment solves the problem in Section 3, lines 13 through 19, by creating a 2-year pilot period, beginning once the USDA approves the pilot program. So we're going to be a year out. That won't happen until 2026, during which the differential aid levels will be held at pre-Medicaid direct certification implementation levels. There would be no impact on the funding formula for implementing Medicaid direct certification. In other words, this is revenue neutral. The ADM, average daily membership numbers, are frozen during the 2-year program at current levels and therefore will not increase the adequacy amount. So creating a 2-year pilot program will give the legislature time to evaluate the impact and effectiveness of MDC, and that we can make decisions informed by real data on participation and costs rather than projections. And during those 2 years of implementation, more of the most economically disadvantaged kids in the state will have access to what may be their only nutritious meal of the day. There will be no effect on education funding. We will be able to see how many families actually participate in the program and the effect of this on children and the effect on schools. So with this data, we will be able to use real outcome data, not projections, to decide whether to continue the pilot and how and whether it should affect state budgets in the future. If the legislature decides to do nothing, the provision will be repealed and the pilot will end. So I'm hoping that you'll see the benefits to this pilot program and this amendment, and I'll hope you support it.
This is the first time I'm reading it, Mr. Chair. So I just like a little bit of time to absorb it if we are inclined to take a vote today.
Or we can wait until Monday, and that's fine too. Yeah, Representative Popovich.
I wasn't planning to make a motion on it, so it's perfectly fine to wait until Monday and discuss it then when everybody had time to read it. If the committee would be so inclined, I can offer a couple of quick thoughts, or I can wait until Monday, whichever the committee feels would be more useful.
I'd be glad to hear your thoughts, but it's just
Thank
me.
you. Yeah. No. Look, sorry. I really should be clearing my throat with my mic off. I apologize. So, when looking at this amendment, it is remarkably similar to the, bill on the same topic that was considered in education policy. The fixes proposed are the fixes that were suggested to the same bill in committee, and the policy committee voted against them. The bill was, not successful on the floor. So, to me, very honestly, I appreciate your passion and interest, but this really seems to be, a policy question that is essentially a rehash of a policy that was already turned down by the House this year. I understand that there are some differences in the language between what was on the House floor and what is proposed here. But again, those differences are quite similar with language that was considered by the policy committee and failed, right? In a partisan vote, to acknowledge that. So for that reason, I probably won't support it on Monday, but I just wanted to give you a quick take so you know where I am on that.
Representative Kelly.
Actually, this was, the original bill was tabled on the House floor recently, and this was an amendment. This was an amendment that was not heard on the House floor.
Correct, which is why I brought up that a similar amendment had been heard by the policy committee, which is very much not the same with the House floor. I completely agree with you. And I do appreciate the reminder that it was tabled. There have been so many bills that I lost track of which of them were tabled and which weren't. Thank you.
Representative Murray.
Thank you. I just want to add a couple things with regards to, I understand the issues surrounding policy, but it also feels incumbent upon me to say that we're talking about human beings. We're talking about live children who are hungry, who are struggling in poverty. And this is a bill that does not have a financial impact on us. For me, it goes beyond policy to more of a moral imperative of helping children who are in poverty and who are struggling. And this is an opportunity to do something about that without it impacting the budget. And it is the right thing to do, policy or not.
Representative Popovich.
Very briefly, since the topic was brought up, I would like to point out that while we repeatedly asked for the last 3 years for examples of specific children who are denied food for their inability to pay in schools, we still have to get one clear example of it. 2 years ago, the testimony was there is no awareness of this. This year, the testimony was that, well, there may be some kids, I cannot tell you where they are and who they are. I completely agree that we do have a hunger issue in the state, but in the schools, we do not have any clear, specific information that we can look at and see why those schools are doing such things, because we kept asking for it and we don't have any. If such testimony was available, we could then have, if that was provided at the proper time in the legislative cycle, we could have followed up, looked at the schools in question, understand what's going on, and come up with the appropriate solution to that problem. But at this point in time, after 3 years of asking for it, we have no real data to indicate this is an issue in schools. It is an issue outside schools, no question about that. So that's where I'm coming from. But I do appreciate the concern.
Representative Kelly.
There were 2 widely publicized incidents just a few months ago, one in Goffstown and one in Keene, and it was public schools. And I can provide you with the 2 media sources if you'd like, but they were widely publicized throughout the state. It has been in the media, and it's quite devastating to hear about children that are being denied food at during the school day. I mean, if you think about it, we know there's children, school children who are not eating nutritious food during the day. Here we are, we get hungry here a whole day long for school children with their developing bodies and brains, and to know that there is poverty and at school, we know that. These are children, they can't come here and testify. But there are 2 incidents, I can bring it to you, from Goffstown and Keene that have happened.
And again, I appreciate the media reports. You guys know what our schedule is. I don't read papers. I don't have time to watch TV. I've been here 5 days a week since the beginning of January. I asked in committee repeatedly. Nobody brought those up. If there were media available, somebody could have brought it up early in the process when we would have had time to look at it. To bring that up at the very end still has to explain why this hasn't been brought up for the last, 3 years I've been asking this question. It is a critical topic. We do need the right data. If we are provided with data that indicates there is a concern, I agree that we should find a way to address it in a responsible way. But again, it's March 21st, right? And up to now, nobody provided a specific example. I'm done because we'll bring this up again on Monday and we can continue that.
Could I just say that, I'm bringing it forward now.
Oh,
Representative Packenfeld.
Mr. Chair, I just, I'm trying to ground my thought process and, fiscal implications for the state of New Hampshire, not only in this cycle, but in future cycles. And, I think it's very interesting that my friend Representative Popovici Mueller is asking for data, and this is a purported fiscally revenue neutral pilot program to determine that data to inform future legislatures about the possibility of this need in our state. So, which does affect our calculations for, fiscal, our determinations about what we're spending in schools. So I do think it's relevant to the conversations we're having. I just have to figure out, if this is the best way to find that data and the best way that, our state can address the potential issue that will affect our future, obligations. So I do think it is relevant. And I'm thankful Representative Kelly brought this forward. I think it's worth consideration.
Representative Murray.
Did you have something you wanted to?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, second that, this will provide some of the information that you're looking for. But I am not going to hide behind an imaginary spreadsheet when we know there is poverty and hungry children in the state. And this is a program that will not cost us anything, will get us that information, and will address hunger within children.
Representative McGuire.
Yes, thank you. Looking at this, I think that Section 2, which says that if someone applies for Medicaid, they'll give them a checkoff box to automatically apply for free and reduced lunch. That seems like a sensible way to address the issue, because when they're signing up for Medicaid, they're filling out the form anyway, and they have to. And so if they've got a checkbox to say, do you want to sign up for the free and reduced lunch? That will solve some of the issues that you're saying about people, the forms getting lost or whatever. I could support that, but the trouble is that is involved in getting a federal waiver or whatever approval for a program, and that's. I don't think that just randomly signing up Medicaid recipients for the school lunch program is a good thing. Asking them if they want to join up, fine, but not just enrolling them without their permission or possibly even their knowledge.
So while I understand that this is revenue neutral over the biennium, as Representative Kelly pointed out, and as we heard in committee as well, the problem is then it blows up from there on out. So it's still going to be a very, very, very costly program, and that is the problem.
Can I reply? So
Kelly?
first to Representative McGuire's concern, we wouldn't just randomly put the checkbox on the form. We have to apply first to the USDA. And okay, well, and secondly, if we find out that we don't want to proceed with the 2 year, when we get the data back and we're able to see how much it will actually cost, we don't have to do anything and the pilot will go away.
It's not about the pilot. It's about certification. Once they're certified, and they're counted. And so going forward, they count. And once they start counting, that's when the education budget blows up.
Oh, I thought you had to recertify every year. I'm confused.
Well, we can argue over the details, but the point is, once they're in the program, they're never coming out of the program. I don't know of any year that our certification has dropped. Okay, you got me.
Yeah, I don't think first of all, I guess a couple of questions to Representative McGuire's point. Doesn't the program exist and we are applying to an already existing program? And so this is to participate in this thing that already exists. And once we are approved in that program, there's a mechanism of this little box to say, yes, I'd like to participate in that. As to the future, yeah, we may have to have some discussions on that, but that is 2 years. And neither you nor I are really going to be able to predict what's going to happen. It may cost more, but the program, if it's a pilot program and we discontinue it, then it's discontinued. There's nothing about, why do you think it's in perpetuity?
So section 2, the way that they're making this, section 3, excuse me, the way that Representative Kelly is making this neutral, he's essentially saying we're not going to count the kids that are signing up for the next 2 years, just for the next 2 years. After that, they count.
Do I misunderstand when I'm thinking that the pilot program is only for 2 years? In 2 years, we will have to decide yet again what to do? Am I misunderstanding that?
What you misunderstand is once you've got the people in the program, the free and reduced program, that blows up the adequacy budget. Yeah, so is everybody okay good with Monday? Okay. Representative Landrigan, Mr. Landrigan.
Well, stop soliciting representatives, yeah.
Yeah, I can't afford to be a rep. I'm sorry. Amendment number 1202H. Representative Irf has an amendment drafted in here relative to EFA phase-out grants. And I'm not sure that's something you're wanting to talk about today.
And I'm going to hold off on this on Monday, but I did want to bring it up as a possibility so you'd have a weekend to think about it and come up with what you did a great job. Last time I gave you time to think. So the idea is just to discuss repealing the phase-out grants. Do we all know what the phase-out grants are? Okay, all right. And they end in 2 years anyway, so this would be repealing them just for their final 2 years.
Could you remind us what the funding of the existing balance? It is in our sheets, but Nikki, do you remember?
It's so the governor has budgeted $750,000 in the first year and $375,000 in the second year. Those numbers were thought to be a little low based on DOE's estimates. So I think if you were going to fully fund EFA grants for the next 2 years under current law, it's about $2.5 million for the biennium.
And the reason I had him draw this up was because this would be general funds, of course, and if things become really tight right at the end there next Tuesday. So that's why the amendment.
The next two are the final two Department of Education items that we walked through the other day. The first, amendment number 1154H on page 39, is relative to requiring school districts to use the assessment portal, the state's assessment portal, for the naturalization exam, which is under current law a requirement for graduation.
Any discussion?
Still on 12:02?
So do I have a motion?
Thought we were waiting until Monday.
No, yes, but we're on the next. I'm sorry, you.
That's why I asked if we're still on 12:02.
I thought you heard the discussion that we missed. So we're on the next one, page 40.
I do not think we have this broadcast to where I was now. So we are on 11:54.
11:57.
1154,
11:54. Yes,
page 39.
you are on top of it.
Give me a moment, please, to actually look at the amendment.
Fair enough.
I think I'd be more than inclined to make a motion to adopt Amendment 1154H to HB2.
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Let me know when you're ready. Representative McGuire.
Yes, I understand that do I read this correctly to say that a high school student must pass the local competency assessment and 70% or better on the citizen and immigration test? Is that correct?
Can you tell us what lines you're reading on?
It's line 11 and 12. Or actually, little b. but
Yeah,
the
no,
paragraph.
right. So just for clarification, Mr. Lanigan, when this shows changes, are they changes with respect to current law or with respect to something else?
So I think what you're seeing there is under current law. I think really the major change here is starting on line 13, the public and charter public schools shall use the assessment portal provided by the Department of Education when submitting.
Right, does that mean, hold on,
I don't think there's any change here to the requirements of the exams for
okay.
graduation.
does that answer your question, Representative McGuire?
I think so, yes. And there's an extra report on line 18.
Right. So if I may summarize just to save
Representative-
time,
Representative Palmich.
we do not change in any way the requirement to take this exam. The only thing that's changed here is that we are asking everybody to take it through the portal provided by the DOE, which is also what required the shall score instead of a grade of, because now, it's the score on the DOE exam. So really, all this is doing is saying, instead of doing it in 20 different portals, do it through one. It simplifies reporting. It makes it easier to aggregate everything.
It also makes the Department of Education provide the accommodations for someone with disability, not rather than each individual school,
And they requested it.
which makes sense. Okay, thank you for the information.
Any further discussion? Do we have a motion?
We have a motion and a second to adopt amendment 1154H.
Okay, no further discussion. All those in favor? Please raise your hand, sorry. And all those, any opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
The final Department of Education related amendment is on page 40, 1157H. This was a department request. Under RSA 186C5, Roman 9, there's a requirement for a decennial audit, we'll call it, evaluation relative to special education. As the committee knows, our LBA audit division completed a special education audit on dispute resolution, and they're currently in there doing another special education audit, performance audits. And what the department is asking is to satisfy the requirements of this existing statute that audit meet that requirement, rather than do an additional SPED-related evaluation in light of all the
Any
SPED
discussion?
performance audits.
If I may.
Representative Pavlovich.
Just as a question, not that I really want to start doing surgery now, but in the same statute that we are adding this paragraph on, which I support, there seems to be a lot of older language about what happened in 13 and 14 and 15 and 12 and whatnot. Is that something that could be potentially cleaned up? I'm not saying we got to do it during this budget process. I'm just wondering, while we are looking at this particular RSA, whether all that should still be there to historically show why stuff happened in 12, or given that happened a decade ago, we can clean up the RSA. And again, I know that's not strictly right here, but I ain't gonna remember to ask this 6 months from now. So
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chair, isn't there some ongoing effort at the department to try to pay for a consultant to essentially clean up the statutes? So I'm not sure that this is our fish to fry at the moment.
Yeah. The problem I have with changing it is then people see a lot of strikeouts and they go, okay, what got stricken out? So, okay. Good. Fair enough. Any further discussion? You may have further discussion. Go
I
for it.
just wanted to make a motion to adopt amendment 1157H to HB2, so then we can have all the necessary discussion with a motion in front of us.
Do I have a second? Representative Bean. And then we'll ask for further discussion. Let me know when you're ready. It does not appear to any further discussion.
Sure, when I need the time. No,
You're all set?
no,
Oh, okay.
I'm just filling in the dead air. That's all.
Oh, okay. You don't need to have that feeling.
I know. Yeah, but that leads to diagnosis and whatnot. We're good. I'm ready.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hand. Very good. Any opposed? No. Motion carries 7-0.
I think it may be easier to just skip the next three for now. We'll circle back to them because those are going to require a deeper discussion, I think we can at least discuss the final two. So jumping down to the Department of Safety, the new resident driver license transfer requirements. So House Bill 133 was retained by Finance. The amendment on page 58, 1194H is the content of that bill. With, I will point out, the appropriation removed. So that bill, how it came to Finance, had a $40,000 general fund appropriation for Department of Safety IT. The amendment on page 58 is the body of the bill without the appropriation.
Representative Murray.
Yeah, I'm only maybe partially remembering. I'm bothered by Section B, an individual subject to who ceases to be a resident of the state within 60 days shall notify the director of their departure from the state. When you move out, you have to tell the state you've moved out. Am I misreading?
No,
Why would you do that?
to help the state.
Mr. Chair, I think my comments earlier from our debate and discussion on both February 19th and March 17th, I'd just like to incorporate them by reference here so that we don't have to relitigate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Representative McGuire.
I think that the reason for doing this is that if you come here, establish your residence, and then within 60 days say, no, this is wrong, and you move back out, that keeps the Department of Safety from jumping on you and requiring you to get a New Hampshire license and all that. It's I would say it probably is impossible to enforce, but if you do it, it'll save you a lot of trouble.
So I guess that's better than my answer, but they're pretty much the same thing. Representative Murray.
Isn't this where we also heard that this is, when DMV came in, this is not the purview of the DMV? It's the purview of the Secretary of State, and they were, am I remembering correctly, very much opposed to doing this, since this is not their job. This is the Secretary of State's job.
So you do remember that correctly. And in light of that, I think I'm going to just share a little story of one of my constituents and that I'm currently suffering through, where the court has said it's not their job. The court issued a court order, which required a birth date, apparently. Court said it's not my job. Sheriff said it's not my job. Department of Safety said it's not my job. Attorney General says, well, they can't do that. So we have these issues in other areas of the state.
In this case, though, yeah, I can appreciate that. And we've all been in the situation where, it all gets shuffled along. But it's almost as if you're, in terms of the amount of work involved, you're asking the DMV to be proactive of saying, did you get your license? Did you get your license? That there's an extra burden on them to reach out, as opposed to having the Secretary of State who has that information follow up some information. So I think, we're told the DMV did not want this. So I think we will be opposed to it.
That was not a surprise. That's not a surprise. We have voted on this already. Representative Popovich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only comment that I'll make, and I agree that the DMV expressed concerns. If I recall correctly, they were concerned about them having to act based on information from the Secretary of State and making people worry about privacy violations and whatnot. That's my recollection of that. The DMV is the one responsible for dealing with driver's licenses. So to me, they are the agency who's got to do something. What this does is that it gives the DMV a clearly defined job that when this type of information becomes available to them, they should notify the people to help them get into compliance. You will notice that this law does not have any new penalties or anything. It's just telling the DMV, please, when you become aware of this issue, remind people of the law, because I assume most people who do not do this because they never realized there was a law on this. So to me, this is something that should increase compliance and avoid trouble for people later. For those reasons, I support it, even though I do note that the DMV would prefer a different approach. But to me, it's their job. Once we are done with this, yes.
And that was the point I was making. According to all these agencies, the courts, the sheriffs, the Department of Safety, all the way up to the Supreme Court, all of them claim the law is not clear as to who has to take responsibility for getting a birth date for somebody like you or I, who is in a small claims court and is told, oh, you have to go out and get the contractor who's basically, stood you up, get their birth date. So this at least is clear. You may not agree with it, and I don't disagree with your disagreement, but my point is that at least it's clear. Anybody else? Any further discussion? All right. So we have a motion, correct?
No, but
No,
I
no,
would
no.
like to make a
Okay,
motion.
Representative Popovich.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Amendment 1194H to HB2.
A second. Representative Bean, thank you. Let me know when you're ready.
Ready?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We'll do the hands, okay? All in favor, raise your hands. 4. All opposed, raise your hands. 3. So 4-3.
Thank you. And again, I am noting the individual members' votes in all the sheets.
That's a privacy thing. Representative Landrigan.
Then
Mr. Landrigan, jeez. Why don't I just call you like Speaker Landrigan?
the next amendment down is relative to USNH and the New Hampshire Excellence in Higher Education Endowment Trust Fund, commonly referred to as the Unique Fund. So what this amendment does, as drafted, would direct $15 million a year from that fund, from the revenue it receives, to be budgeted in the university system of New Hampshire's line in House Bill 1. You don't see that other side to this right now. This amendment was included here. Representative Wirth wanted to just offer it today for discussion, but I think we'll do USNH next week, is my understanding.
So I'd just like to explain what's going on here. It's going to be very difficult not to manipulate the UNH budget this cycle, potentially. And this was my first attempt to minimize that to the extent possible. The unique funds come from Fidelity to the state of New Hampshire, about $15 million a year. Not generally speaking, the way they're typically used, but not always. Something similar to what I'm talking about here has been done before. In fact, exactly the same thing. So they get distributed amongst all the universities in the state, private or public. And apparently in the past that was used to build up their endowment. Now, as I understand it, it's actually used for scholarships. But the state actually does control these funds. So by allocating them to the UNH budget, I can reduce their budget by $15 million a year. And I've described this to them as well. This is not a secret what I'm doing here. So it basically frees up $30 million of general funds. And we can wait and discuss it on Monday if you want, or you can hear about it now if you want. You can discuss it now if you'd like.
Did the treasurer weigh in on this one in terms of like solving? Is it solvency? Is the fund solvent after this allocation as well?
Well, this isn't about a fund. So Fidelity, the company, actually gives the state the money for this purpose. Well, for the purpose which I originally described, which is, well, they don't give it for any purpose. Okay, I should go back.
Okay.
I didn't go to the details of why Fidelity gives us money. They don't just hand us a check and say, hey, nice knowing you guys. So we run our 529 savings program through Fidelity. You're familiar with that? And as you're probably aware, the state of New Hampshire has a very large one, overly large relative to the size of our state because we don't have state income taxes and that sort of thing. So people from around the country use our program. So it's a very large college savings account program that generates a lot of revenue for Fidelity. And this is basically, I don't know what the appropriate word is, but maybe Representative McGuire does, as to why it feeds off $15 million a year for us. Do you happen to know, Representative McGuire, what the?
I think that was in the original agreement when we set up the program.
Okay. So basically
It's a percentage of a small percentage of the assets.
And originally we used it, again, as I understand it, to build up the endowments of all the schools around the state. I think they divided it up by school population, school enrollment. And then maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we shifted to this model that I just described, where it was used for scholarships. Again, same division, but used for scholarships. And then I can't remember if it was 10 years ago, but around that time period, when they had a situation similar to ours, they did the same thing where they made use. In fact, I think at that point it was the chancellor, the current chancellor was our treasurer, our state treasurer. And I believe she actually volunteered and said, oh, by the way, we have these funds, we can make them available to the state to close the budget gap.
So as a follow-up, thank you for the description. It's like good reminder of the program and more. As a reminder that, or as a follow-up question, if you divert the 15 million from the scholarships directly to the university system, that obviously means the scholarship program is not going to be funded at the same level.
Yeah, well, obvious. I would think that's obvious.
Yeah. So I guess, is there any remaining funding that would go to scholarships, or that would just be zeroed out?
Do you want to speak to that?
Oh,
It's you.
You are. It is Lauren, right?
The Department of Treasury's budget has an estimate in the college savings accounting unit of or just over $18 million a year from this source. So if this is 15, I think you can infer maybe 3 million, but that revenue is going to depend on what actually, but that was the estimate. Yeah, and that was the estimates that were put in the budget package that came over. So it's not 100% of the anticipated revenue, at least from the estimates we're using.
As another follow-up,
Sure.
is the 15 million like a conservative estimate? Like there's no way the market would cause it to go below that. And then
This isn't a market related thing.
So it's just a trust fund with
It's not a
interest-bearing.
fund. It's just a. Yeah, Representative Popovich.
The type of programs, the 529s, it is highly unlikely they will swing by that high of a percentage that the amount will drop from 18 to below 15. So, it would take a massive seismic shift, So you'll notice that I'm avoiding, I'm not really saying impossible. I'm just saying it's highly unlikely, but that's all we got right now.
So just for the committee's indulgence, the revenue for the last 4 completed fiscal years was 17.7, 19.2, 17.0, and 18.2. So at least with recent history, 15 million is safe.
Representative Murray?
So I have a note that money is being moved into division or into the trust fund for the university,
Into the United's budget line from our point of
into
view.
the budget line for the university. But I have the thing, Division 1 is repealing the governor's scholarship fund. These are tied?
No, these are not tied. This is not a scholarship fund.
They're both overseen by the College Savings Plan Advisory Commission, whatever they're called, but they are two different funding sources. The Governor's Scholarship Program is funded with just straight general funds every year in the operating budget.
Okay.
The unique program and the endowment direct scholarship program is funded by the Fidelity revenue. So they are two separate and distinct programs.
So this is not money from that. The governor's scholarship fund is going away. Well,
Whatever
proposed.
Division 1's doing, but that Governor's Scholarship is completely different from this.
Yeah,
It's just
okay.
overseen by the same commission.
I need it. Thank you.
Representative Popovich, did you? Oh, okay. No, I thought you were. Any other discussion? And do you want to wait until Monday, or are you comfortable voting now? Or can we even vote without the other half?
I think doing it as far as one whole
Package?
package with
Okay.
USNH makes
That's
more
fine.
sense.
Yep, okay, good. So, Mr. Landrigan, where should we go next?
So we'll go up because I think amendment there's 2 relative to vanity fee increase. Really the last 3 sections here are somewhat related, and we're going to dive into some numbers. We'll switch over from law to numbers here from the amendments. Is the committee good without a break or anything? Just keep going?
Keep going.
So I guess the first thing to do could be the increase of the vanity plate fee from $40 to $50. There's 2 amendments here, only because they're exactly the same. The package was put together with I just wasn't sure who was going to offer what, so I put them both in there, just so nobody would wonder why theirs wasn't in the document today. So they're identical, and the way that the vanity fee revenue works, And I won't get into all the detail, but ultimately this does impact the bottom line. And the bottom line is it would impact general fund revenue. So both of these amendments increase $10. The effective date would be, now I'm worried I didn't have the right effective date in here. Yeah, so that'll be a technical thing. So if you agree to either one of these today, the effective date should be 1 January 26. It should be on a calendar year basis. So the estimated revenue associated with this amendment is $3 million over the biennium. So 1 million the first year, a full 2 million the second year because of the 6 month until the effective date.
And dedicated for transit.
No. So so Representative Murray's suggestion would be that this would be used to be able to offset approving item number 6 on page 3 of the amendment package, the tracking pack. So this was the transit operating match. So this would be general funds provided to the Department of Transportation to provide to the area transit providers so they can use it to match federal funds. So there is no direct in the way that the amendment's drafted. It's kind of a two-step. 1, increase general fund revenue. 2, increase general fund appropriations, and they net almost even.
My question is, initially the original intent of this was to tie them together, but not to have created a new dedicated fund. Is there any magic language that can do that, or is this all just a trust and verify?
So I asked them to do them separately because I'm not inclined to support the non-use of it for general funds.
You're not inclined to support the
The use of it for other than just putting it into general funds. In other words, for the transportation stuff. Representative Popovich?
I just want to remind everybody how much we are trying to identify which of the dedicated funds should still be dedicated and where they're funded at appropriate level. I agree that there is a place for them, but to me, this is not a tie that I would like to make long term. I think that if we decide to do this in this budget, will be taken care of in this budget. And my hope is that going forward, we'll have more rosy budgets where we wouldn't have to worry about the amount of money for the public transportation to get that match would be affected. So I would strongly suggest that, we stick with a general fund approach to just to decrease that proliferation of dedicated funds that, has a limited benefit.
Murray, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're so hopeful. I find it, we had these discussions and the thread of public transportation goes through everything. It goes to students getting to school. It goes to parents getting to a grocery store. It goes to anybody getting to a medical appointment. It goes to getting people to work. This is such a fundamental, important thing. We've never done it particularly well in New Hampshire, but we are the sort of state where it is really important to have some type of public transportation. And it seemed to me that it was a good match to be able to raise by a small amount the funds in order to help direct public transportation around that. So I would like to see that. I don't like the micromanaging. I don't want to do, little things here and there, but this is so incredibly critical to our infrastructure, to the social stability of the community. And as I recall, I think perhaps correctly, for $1 that we put into public transportation, we get $8 back with people working and people buying groceries and people being able to survive on their own. So I very much support doing something for public transportation. I fully appreciate the problems of not wanting to be things too overly directed, but this is such a critical area for us. I really would like to see that part.
Representative Kelly?
I agree with everything that Representative Murray just said, plus we're leaving federal money behind. That's huge.
Representative somebody or no? No?
Yeah, so I do have
Hagen-Phelps.
a question for the division. If you're not interested in tying a permanent connection between the raised fee and the possible allocation to transit, or inclination that this should go and cover transit. Is it possible to create like a sunset, like this would just be for the 2-year and then it would disappear again, or it could phase into the general fund without allocation, or like an intended purpose after that?
Do we know when was the last time when the vanity plate fee has been increased?
I think it was 2009.
Then the answer is that this seems to be a fee that needs to be increased regardless because it hasn't been increased since 2009. So I don't know if it would make any sense to temporarily increase it only to decrease it when again it hasn't been changed since 2009.
Yeah, that's not what I said. To keep the increase permanent, but not to keep the like intended allocation beyond the biennium. So just support float transit for this biennium, and then to have that total permissible use after that.
If I may ask a clarifying question, what difference would it make between those two hypotheticals, one in which we adopt a formal dedicated fund on a temporary basis or whatever we want to label it, versus we just approve the fee increase and approve the increase in public transportation funds? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what the meaningful difference is between those two.
Yeah, well, we've just created new revenue for the state by increasing the fees. So the other contemplation was for those dedicated funds to come out of, an alternate source of revenue. So, this is a specific new change.
It has an accounting unit. There's a line for it, right? 2928. We can fund accounting unit 2928. Is that the right line?
2916, the one right beneath that.
Whatever the line is, right? But
Right there.
There, oh,
Yeah,
29 was
but I
accounting
think,
2916. We can simply fund that account.
and that's what I'm saying. I think either of them achieves the same thing, and one of them is simpler. So I would rather not complicate. At least as I understand it, I'm just trying to see if I'm missing something because obviously, I may.
In both, I'll clarify, in both, whether you increase the fee and dedicate it or keep it unrestricted general funds and appropriate it, it's the same cost essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, and the bottom line, it helps transportation. And I think it's appropriate to say that, we've raised this fee and we would like to see it used for 2916.
Don't have to vote today, but it would be nice if we get at least one more thing done. Representative Kelly.
Do we have any idea how much we would get back in general funds for this amount?
It's about 3 million for the biennium, 1 million the first year and 2 million the second year, because it'll be a 6-month until it kicks in. 1 January is when the fee would be changed. So it's about 2 million.
I'm sorry, I meant federal funds. I'm sorry, didn't mean general funds.
I
The
don't
matching
have that answer.
amount.
I
I
don't.
thought it was pretty much 1-to-1, but I could be wrong.
My recollection was somewhere along the lines of 1-to-1 for some of that. Yeah, because there was a lot of testimony. Some of it is actually a higher match, but it's only for a very limited percentage that's used for a specific purpose. And the vast majority of the matches were going to be, I think, 1-to-1. So I would, for the purposes of this work session, I would stick with 1-to-1. And if anybody checks notes and discovers something different, bring it up on Monday, Mr. Landrigan, there is a long list of fees that we were planning to raise on the transportation. Was this one of them?
This is not a highway fund revenue source. The other amendment that we'll get to is highway fund sources.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, this was not included in that list because that was geared more towards what they wanted to do to fix their highway funds.
Correct.
While this may be a 12-hour question, are there any other fees that the DMV or the Transportation Department has not raised in a long time that would go to the general fund? I know that it's probably something I should have asked when they were here, but hindsight is 2020.
I think the short answer is probably yes. I just don't have them off the top of my head or have any details on that today.
Acknowledging it's 3 p.m. on Friday, if there is any way you could maybe get some information from them on that, because again, there doesn't seem to be much of a point in going through the pain of changing a bunch of fees and not catching all the fees that would need to be updated based on the same criteria. I understand that our focus in the past was narrowly on the highway fund, which is a true concern, but you know, if we are gonna annoy everybody, we may as well annoy them once and get most of the problems done rather than bother them again in a couple of years.
I will just say we're late in the
Agreed.
cycle. And if I'm not mistaken, this particular fee is actually occupies its own special place in law,
It does.
separate from others.
Yeah, this one is, so to give everyone just the full picture of how the vanity plate revenue works is it first goes to fund the driver education training office at Department of Safety, about $200,000 to $300,000 a year. Then $1.5 million goes to the Detective Bureau as restricted revenue, and then everything after that goes to the general fund. So this one is very different. It's not just a pure unrestricted source of revenue. It has a little flow, but ultimately it does all eventually get to the general fund, any increase you do.
And I think Mr. Landigan's going to be pretty busy over the weekend.
And I do want to clarify, I'm not actually sure there are really any other general fund now that I think of it, because everything is tied to some sort of restricted account. DOT, I don't think has any general fund revenue. Safety has a little bit, but this is the biggest source right here. So what we can do with that is hold, or are you,
I'm comfortable with whatever. That would you like to do? Hold it till Monday?
Sure.
Okay. Representative Popovich?
One very last thought, just so that I don't surprise anybody on Monday. If it's been 2009, maybe just from 40 to 50 may not be enough to catch up with inflation. So I would like to just float that idea so people can have some time to consider whether the amount is something that we may want to consider talking about. So
and I can work with Representative Murray if you'd like to differentiate the two amendments, if, you know, just so on Monday, if either, you know, so we don't have the same exact amendment again there twice. I can work with you after. All right, so now I think the easy stuff we just did, to be honest with you. So I'm going to get into with the last two amendments that we have here. One is relative to all the variety of things we talked about with Fish and Game, and then the other is the motor vehicle fee increases. We'll do the motor vehicle fee increases first, since we were just kind of talking about that. It's a better segue. So on Amendment 1169H and Amendment 1203H on pages 44 and 49 respectively. Quick explanation of the two amendments. The first one, 1169H, is essentially the worksheet that the Department of Safety brought in. That's what that amendment is. It's about $40 million in a full year of highway fund revenue, 20 million in the first year, again, because of that 6 months until it kicks in. So about 60 million over the biennium. And the second amendment, and I will also point out that one included boat registration fees. The Department of Safety did include that on that worksheet, which I backed out because to get to the number, because that does not go to the highway fund, as you probably would have imagined. So, but that amendment does include it. I don't think that was really something that helps the highway fund. I'm not necessarily sure we want that, but that is included in that amendment. Amendment 120H is the same idea. The boater fees are removed, and the registration fees on passenger vehicles, and I can point you to where that is in the amendment, are slightly reduced to generate $30 million a year instead of 40. So 15 million, so it'd be 45 over the biennium instead of 60. So that's the difference between these two amendments. I'll show you exactly where that is. If you go to page, let's see. Yeah, page, yeah, so if you go to page 50, at the very bottom there, that subparagraph G, where we get into the vehicle registration, starting with the 0 to 3,000 pound vehicles, $42. And then if you flip to the next page, 48 and 66 versus the previous amendment was 43.20, 55.20, and then 75.20. So those are just a little cheaper in the second amendment than the previous amendment. And like I said, it's 45 million in revenue versus 60.
And Mickey, one had boats included, the other one did not. So the first one did not, the second one did?
Vice versa. The first
Oh,
one did,
shoot.
the second one doesn't. Like I said, the boat ones don't help the highway fund in any way, which is, I think in hindsight, I think I probably should have caught that. And I think I had suggested to the department they could include those, but we probably shouldn't have, because we never talked. Boater fees go to the Navigation Safety Fund, which funds Marine Patrol, which is not something that we were looking to increase fees relative to. So that's the difference.
So I had asked Mr. Landrigan, if I can find this, all the sheets he put out here. So he did, the first one there, starting on page 44, is the fees as they came to us. And calculated that out, and it came up to $60 million. And I said, okay, so where is that going to leave us with respect to the highway fund's bottom right-hand number on the surplus statement? And it left a pretty healthy amount. So I went back and looked at their, well, a couple things. One, we just had a fiscal meeting this morning, and we approved about a little under $5 million for additional winter snow removal, which is apparently a pretty general thing. And you may recall from their presentation to us that winter maintenance, a priority request was more of that, and also the retention incentive program. And these are mentioned on lines 3 and 5 of page 3, which is the surplus statement, I believe. No, not surplus statement. It just is what it is.
Tracking sheet.
Yeah, tracking sheet. Thank you. So I ballparked half of that, half of the retention, half of the winter maintenance, all the winter maintenance that we approved this morning, and figured between. And so I added all that up and said, you know what, we're probably giving is the wrong word. We could probably reduce the $60 million to $45 million, still leave a good, healthy number down there in the lower right-hand corner of the surplus statement when it's finally done. At the same time, having given them a lot of their priority needs, as well as taking care of this year's issues, and thus reduce the fees by somewhat. Not a lot, but basically take about a quarter of the fees out. So that's the motivation for the Second Amendment.
And I'll point out on page 6 of this, you'll see a summary of what Representative Erf just described. So this is just a mini little surplus statement here for the highway fund, that first table. So where we are right now with the highway fund surplus statement is we're estimating about a $14.5 million deficit at the end with the decisions to date and where we're at. So you'll see the $45 million in revenue. And then going down, we have a few items. One's relative to the motor vehicle inspection repeal bill. There's some costs at safety they identified. Switching some general funds and highway funds in the Department of Safety. This move would spend $6 million of highway funds, but free up $6 million in general funds. And then you'll see those items, retention, the winter maintenance, the employee retention program, and the winter maintenance line item. This is half of, like Representative Erf said, from the department request. Lastly, we talked about the highway block grant. We'd have to account for that since that's based on revenue. And ultimately, with all of those things included, the highway fund would end with about $11.6 million at the end of the biennium in this plan. That's everything in here that, if you look behind, we can walk through each of the individual changes, but that's the summary of what's being put forward.
Representative Popovich? What do you?
Two quick questions. One, there were some fees that seem to be out of sync on this, and I don't want to take a lot of time this afternoon on it, but I'd like over the weekend to tweak with a few. They were not in the vehicle registration, so they won't be hugely material to this. But would it be better to adopt whichever the committee decides and then tweak it a little on Monday if we decide that some of the fees are a bit out of whack? I don't want to hold on, and I want to give you an opportunity to update all these tracking sheets. But I do want to give you a heads up that there are some places where, for example, the stupid agricultural tractor fee used to be half of a normal tractor. Now they are tied. To me, that's a policy change. I think it would be wise to keep them at the same ratio and increase them by the same amount. Things like that, not huge ones, but I would be fine adopting whichever version the committee chooses and then tweaking it once more. I'm just trying to understand what would be easier for you because you are carrying a heavy load.
So one of the things that we did, they're not all changed proportionally. We tried to avoid the car registration fees, since those are the ones that people, really see, and tried to focus on some of the easier ones that made a bigger impact. So you'll find that they're not all a fixed percentage more than they were in either one of these. I don't think. Is that true? Or is it just in the second one that we did that adjustment?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
If I'm not mistaken, we tried to avoid things like the car registration fee, increasing that one.
It is increased, but the difference between what Department of Safety presented and then the second amendment here is those are scaled back a little bit. The vehicle registrations are scaled.
No, I knew that, but you didn't also focus the increases in certain areas?
Or licenses. I think it was licenses.
Oh, that was
Yeah, they would. Down at the bottom, are you thinking of the department's sheet that they provided? There was a lot of fees that weren't changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My second question was regarded to something we talked about earlier, the boating fees. I understand that as of now, the fees go into a dedicated fund, which is appropriately funded. Would HB2 allow us to, if we increase those fees, increase some general fund revenues, or are there any federal or other regulations that would require that anything we collect as a boat fee has to be used for that dedicated fund? Again, looking for flexibility, and because look, every time we update a fee to match inflation and we increase the revenue, those are fewer dollars we got to cut from somewhere. And I'm trying really hard to avoid painful cuts by looking under every nook and cranny for appropriate fee increases that reflect the inflation, not real money increases, but just keeping it up. Obviously, there would be no point in increasing those if they have to go into that fund, because then we're just piling money into a fund where they don't get used. But
I'll have to confirm. I don't think there's any federal conflict or anything besides state law, but I can confirm with the department.
if you could confirm, because if that's the case, I would probably want us to look into having an amendment that would increase the fees and make sure that that dedicated fund is appropriately funded, but then takes, the amount above a certain level and puts it into the, general fund, one way or the other. I know we can talk about various ways to do that, and I don't want to go too far down the road until we know whether that's even allowable. But again, time is short, so I'm trying to get all the thoughts out in time for you to hopefully get some sleep after answering all of them. So,
Representative Hackett Phillips.
Thanks. Mickey, I was making notes on lines 8 and 9 while you were describing line 10 of that page 6. So I guess my question is this different than the current apportionment A, allocation, or is this funding? Could you restate what you said before?
So apportionment A is better known as highway block grants. So we pay municipalities 12% of previous year road toll and motor vehicle fees that go to the highway fund are paid for in grants. So by assuming $45 million over the biennium, there's going to be an increase in that line because it is directly related to revenue. Since it is a year in arrears, we would only have an impact in fiscal 27 based on fiscal 26 revenue. So 12% of that 15 million is about 1.8 million. And so we would increase that line. And the reason why, if you see on page 8, I have just a general, I think I would ask that the motion just be, you ask me to true up that line item with wherever you end up with revenues versus trying to show you exactly what it's going to be as we're going through.
Any further discussion, and then where are we? Do y'all want to wait to do something about this? So
Can we please
yes.
hold till Monday on that one?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Representative Popovich?
No, I just, never mind, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Moving on, the last amendment in your package for you today is on page 41, and it's relative to the Fish and Game Department. And right on that same page where we were, that page 6, that second table down is a similar summary of Representative Erf's proposal for Fish and Game Fund. And I can walk us through, we can either go through the House Bill 2 amendment section by section, or I can walk through this table. I don't know what is easier for what you prefer. Maybe we could even do both.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's up to the committee how they like to look at things.
Well, let's do the House Bill 2 amendment first, and then it'll all be familiar when we get to the table. So on page 41, and we'll go section by section real quick. So sections 1 and 2 of the amendment are relative to expanding the gifts and donations account at the department to include raffles, and also provide some statutory authority for the department to offer raffles. That was one of the items that they came in with as a way to make some money for running the department. So that's what sections 1 and 2 accomplish. Section 3, another way to help them with their operating expenses, is they wanted to expand the use of the pheasant license revenue to also include, you'll see on line 28, as well as for program management and implementation. This provides a little bit more usage than just for the birds that they release out. The next section, section 4, is relative to the fisheries habitat fee and account. First, it raises the fee from $1 to $5. And then if you look further down, it requires that of that $5 fee now, $4 will go to the Fish and Game Fund as unrestricted revenue to help support it, while maintaining the existing $1 that goes to the dedicated account. So that will remain unchanged. The fee increase will just purely help the Fish and Game Fund. Continuing down in the fisheries habitat, there's statutory language that says in any year, if the balance exceeds $750,000, that excess would be transferred to the Fish and Game Fund.
At the end of the
At the end
calendar
of the
year,
fiscal year. Yep. The next item, section 5, the game management account. There's no fee change to this program, but there is the similar. If in any year the balance exceeds $750,000, it would be swept to the Fish and Game Fund.
Representative Popovich?
Just a quick question. That means that if we pass this as it is, the first time that would be swept would be in 26, right? Well, not the way I read this language.
Stay tuned. There's more. Well, let me get through the whole thing.
Oh, please do.
We do a fiscal 25 sweep, but you'll see. Yeah, you're okay. You're good. And then section 6 is the habitat license fee. So this is 2 steps we're going to deal with this one. The first one is changing, so that account also is subject to the $750,000 sweep. That's section, excuse me, section 6. Section 7, this fee is actually set in administrative rule. So in order to us to facilitate that rule change, you'll see on page 43 on line 9 that the habitat fee shall be set at no less than $5, with half of it, which is the current $250, would go to the Wildlife Habitat Fund, and the additional $250 would go to the Fish and Game Fund.
Representative Popovich?
In terms of language, if our intent is to permanently split it half and half, then the language, what I should read further down?
Yeah.
I know, that's my concern, because no less than 5, 250, what happens to any amount over 5? Are we requiring, is it our intent to ensure that at least 250 and at least 250 goes other way, and then let the rule, making decide what does the rest, in which case the language is fine? Or was our intent to make it so they can set the amount, but we'd like it to be split half and half, in which case we'd have to edit the language? I'm just trying to understand what is that we are doing.
It's a good point. I I hard coded it to 250. I think that was the intent at the committee at the time. Then it ended up being rules. To the extent this fee hasn't been changed since the 90s, I'm not sure they will do much more than $5, but it's possible they may. And if they did, it would be 250 locked in, and it would. If they did something besides $5, the statutory construct would be a problem.
And
I would
unless
say.
I'm mistaken, if they increased it to whatever, they could use the money for the purposes that the 250 is being used for.
Yeah, I mean, I think Representative Popovici brings up a good point that if they did $6 and the law says 250 and 250, what happens to that other dollar?
Whoa, wait a minute. So what is the fund for as it exists today?
Let's say for wildlife habitat.
Okay.
I'm not sure
Okay.
what they do.
So can they not use, let's say they've got, $1 bazillion in their fish and game fund. Can they not use that for wildlife habitat? Forget about this amendment. Just,
Yep. I don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure to answer that. If
well, they
it's,
could certainly come back and ask for that.
yep. I think Representative McGuire, from her gel car expertise,
Yes.
may have some thoughts here.
This gives them no maximum. They could set it at $100 if they so choose, and they could convince Gelcar that it was in the public interest. So-
Which they can now. Yeah. What I think the issue is if they set it at $6, how would this
Exactly.
250? That, and I think that is a reasonable concern. So, what I could do with this, and the committee can decide whatever. We can say X dollars, and then the remainder goes to the habitat or percentages or whatever you want to do.
If I may.
I have another question, not regarding that particularly, but every year we hear about the Moose Lottery and how it's oversubscribed. And I wonder if we could increase the moose fee.
I'm almost certain that's also an administrative rule, but certainly similar to this type of language, you could statutorily say it shall be set at no less than whatever, or bring it back to statute. I think many of the fish and game fees used to be in RSA. Back 10 years ago when they were, 10 years ago, 2016, when they were all last increased is when it got moved to administrative rule, and now it's at the commission through the
And the
director.
rules last for 10 years, so they're coming around this year. So now's the time to say, boost them up a bit. I mean, I don't know that the turkey fee's too high, but from all the stories I read about the moose hunts, that fee's too low.
And we did hear from the executive director that she's exploring this conversation with the commission as far as perhaps a larger scale look at the fees.
Okay, well then they'll come in the rules. But I think that if our intent is to split that 50-50, we should say half instead of 250, if you don't mind my saying.
No, let her finish.
I am.
Let me speak. That's not my intent. Now, you can all have a different intent, and that's fine. We can discuss that. But Mickey did what I asked him to do. I'm tired of these dedicated funds, trying to eliminate them. I know this one isn't getting eliminated, but I want the funds in the Fish and Game Fund, which has a lot more flexibility. So that's my perspective. You can all have a different perspective, and that's fine.
If
But
I
he
may-
did what I
If
asked.
that's your intent, Representative Irf, wouldn't it be appropriate to say 250 for the Wildlife Habitat Fund and the remainder going to the Fish and Game Fund?
I'm happy with that.
So that way you're covered no matter what the fee is.
Okay. So, so then, okay.
And then that way, our estimate of Fish and Game Fund revenue would be the floor. And if they did a higher than $5, it would only benefit their fund. Yep.
No.
So if that's a
No, just the reverse.
Fish and Game funding,
I want the most of the money. I want the money to keep going into the Fish and Game Fund.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
250 to the and the remainder.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be at least 250, but if they did a $6 fee, it'd be $350 to the Fish and Game Fund and $250 maintained to its current. The only thing is under current law, I don't know if I should be saying this, but just in case under current law, they can through administrative rule change this and help the habitat account. If we wrote it that way, they would never be able to help the habitat account, even if they raise the fee to $10.
I keep going back to my original question.
Which
Can they not do the habitat fund, whatever it is that funds, can they not also use fish and game funds for that? Well, I mean, what are
They
these?
probably could. They probably could. Yeah.
I mean, if I eliminated that whole dedicated fund, which is what I really want to do,
Yeah.
where would it come from?
So just to clarify, I'll redo this to say 250 to the wildlife habitat and the remainder to the unrestricted fishing game. Okay. Yeah, I should have caught that when I drafted this. All right. The next section, section 8, there's this is the fiscal 25 sweeps. So there's 3 funds here that at the end of this fiscal year, anything above, for the first 2, anything above 750,000 would sweep to the fish and game fund. And then the third one is relative to the sale of fish food. You remember that little account that they brought? So anything remaining in that fund at the end of the fiscal year will go to the fish and game fund. And then you'll see the next section down is a statutory repeal of that program. Does that all make sense? Okay. And then while it's all fresh in our head, let's skip right back to page number 6, and we'll see all the numbers associated with those changes. So as of right now, the fish and game fund ending balance at the end of the biennium is 1.337 million. The transfers associated with either the $750,000 a year transfers, we'll call them. We've got the sweeps. We've got 120,000 estimated from fisheries habitat and 1.3 million coming from the game management. I didn't carry an amount here for the sale of fish food. It's so insignificant. There's like a couple $1,000 available in there, if that is de minimis, yes. So there's a $1.3 million pickup, 1.35. Next is the fee increases that will now be going to the fish and game fund. So the fisheries habitat and the wildlife habitat respectively would get $765,000 for the biennium. So those 2 added generates an estimated 2.1 million over this budget plan for the fish and game department. And then they had 3 requests that touch fish and game funds. One is to fund that environmental review position, which we've heard about for a couple years now, ARPA funded. The ARPA money runs out at the end of this calendar year. They would need 18 months to cover it for this biennium. That's the cost you see there. The fish and game fund would absorb that. They asked for an increase of their DOIT line. That's the $638,000 you see. And then they had also asked to convert, essentially get rid of 6 seasonal part-time positions and establish 1 permanent full-time position. And that comes with a budgetary savings of $24,000 over the biennium. So the net of those is $754,000. When you consider the balance we started with, the revenue, the spending, the fish and game fund would end with about $2.7 million in this plan, which is a little bit more than what the governor provided. Plus there's some mechanisms in law now that could help them in perpetuity.
So what do y'all think?
Good with this?
Can we vote on this one, or do you want to hold this one as well? Oh, you want to wait for the final amendment?
If you're good with that small change, I can get all this drafted, and I'll include this amendment in your tracking. So if someone doesn't like it and disagrees with it, you can always revisit it.
Okay, I just don't want to disturb anybody. Oh, geez, here we go. Representative
To
Popovich.
make a motion to move things along, but if that's not acceptable to the chairman, so I'd like to move to adopt Amendment 1182 to HB2 with the minor change we described, that in the paragraph on the wildlife habitat fee, the amount will be $250 to the habitat account and the remainder to unrestricted funds of the fish and game. So that's my motion.
Do we have a second? Representative Bean? What's up? Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-2-0.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
So where are we, sir?
Next, I'll point you to pages 9 and 10. Representative Erf has some House Bill 1 proposed amendments here in the Department of Education. So these would be House Bill 1, Section 1 line item changes within the department's budget. And we can go through each one there. I tried to put some notes there tying back to the governor's budget so you can see where the reductions would occur and a little note about each. I'm not sure if that's something anyone's going to want to vote on today, seeing it for the first time, but it's there if you want to, or I can keep it on the slate for Monday.
So maybe you can go over them, but before you do, so basically, a number of these, I think all of them, but I could be wrong, went through the agency budget and then to the governor. So it was in that phase of the process. And apparently they did not need them to balance their budget. And I could use them balancing our budget. So that's why I decided to pick them up. And I'll ask Mickey, he can probably explain more detail what they actually are.
To some extent, I can. There's
Well,
a
okay,
couple
to
of
the
these I'm
extent that you
not, I'm
can.
not overly familiar. So the first item number 1 would be the abolishment of 1 permanent position and 3 temporary positions within the accounting unit for student wellness. We already, as part of an earlier action of this committee, removed a position from this accounting unit. So this would be in addition to that.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, could you remind me, were these currently filled and unfunded or currently vacant and you're trying to unfund them now? I'm confused.
I believe they're currently vacant and being unfunded. Representative Popovich?
I actually don't even recall us discussing eliminating a field position in the Department of Education. So everything that's eliminated there is vacant and most likely for quite a while and definitely not planned to be filled.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah, Representative Hacken Phillips. I bet from my working with Division 1, approximately a third of the positions are unfilled, unfunded, and so Dan's leading a campaign to abolish most of those, so that it's easier to figure out which ones you need and which ones you don't.
Representative Popovich.
And just for the record, I'm perfectly comfortable making a motion if everybody's comfortable, but I would be more than happy to wait if anybody would like to take the weekend to review this. I'm fine either way.
You know, I'd imagine you want to think about it. I'm not asking to vote on this. I just wanted to put it forth so you know what it was all about.
I guess I thought 2171, the student wellness state aid accounting unit, I thought this was part of the assessments that they were doing. Am I wrong? I thought we had an extended conversation about that. No? For the MTSSB? There's a service contract for comprehensive assessments there. Maybe that's why they want to cut it, because they can't hire internally.
Okay, so it appears that this unit is going away, and you're looking out over the biennium, there's a savings of $1 million plus a little. But I've got 800,000 here and here. I got 1.6. Maybe those numbers don't need to match. I'm just confused about.
This is not the entirety of that accounting unit. So if you go to page 1113, in the big book, that accounting unit has 3 permanent positions. So we already took one with an earlier action. This would be one more, leaving still one position and some activity in there. This doesn't zero out the entire accounting unit. And
Are you all waiting for me? The next one, okay.
Take your time.
No, but so,
I'm going to point out the next one has a header issue. So you see how it repeats the same? It's not supposed to. So I'll give you the correct information. It should be accounting unit 2503, entitled Instructional Support.
Are you in number 2 of the
Number
number
two.
2 block?
Yeah.
can you say that again?
Oh, yep. So in the second block down,
Yep.
the second item, it should be accounting unit 2503. And the name of the account is Instructional Support. And it's governor's page 1120.
And so this is going, you're taking away one position here. There was 3 governors asking for 5, and we're going to go for 4.
In which one are you on? Number
I'm
1 or
at
2?
2503.
So that one there, all of this item is doing is just reducing out-of-state travel by $6,800. You already, in an earlier action, took a position out of here, and this is just removing some out-of-state travel, item number 2.
Waiting for you, or are we just carrying on?
The question is, what do you all want to do in terms of you want to be able to study this over the weekend, or do you want to do it right now? That's fine.
I
Either
think
way.
I probably want to study over the weekend, but I would like to pick Mickey's brain while
Pick-
he's here.
pick away.
To understand what I'll be thinking about on the weekend. The robotics thing is just going away. Is that basically?
I don't think in entirety. And I'm not sure it takes all of the dollars out of there. So the grant money would remain. This item here, I'm sorry. Yep, about $500,000 would remain. If you go to page 1145 in the budget,
Yep.
it takes some of the part-time money out and reduces some of the robotics fund grant amount, but it would keep some in there. So currently there's $750,000 per year in this accounting unit, and this takes about 1/3 of it.
I see that.
Fund never spent the entire amount allocated.
I think they have some carry forward from that'll go from this biennium into the next for the robotics fund.
And adult education is being reduced by 2/3, more or less. 602. I'm at 439.
So this would reduce all of the non-match state funds on account 60, or excuse me, class line 602. You see it on page 1151. The accounting unit starts on 1150.
Can you say that again? What is being reduced?
So
Oh, there
the
it
class line 602 for the state fund for non-matching, And this would zero out that line.
What does that mean?
I don't have that answer here today. I'm not sure what that money goes for directly. State.
So it eliminates the 800 and, yeah, okay, I see the connection. And then 1169. I'm not finding this. I'm on the right page.
For,
Yeah,
are you at number 5? Yeah, so one of the, two of the positions, the vacant ones that you already voted
There
on
it is.
came out of this accounting unit. This item here, number 5, essentially takes out all the rest of the dollars in that accounting unit. So that would be zeroed out.
So it's eliminating the Office of Early Childhood.
Yes, and if you look back in that account, there's been no activity in there. I'm not sure. There was no spending at all in fiscal 24. There is an authorized budget in fiscal 25. Those positions are not filled. I don't think there's any functionality in that office.
Okay, and then. Turn my thing to 1080. 1080. Oops.
This item, number 6, seeks to reduce funding associated with one of the assigned positions at DOAT to the Department of Education. I do not know if that position is vacant. This is how it came to me.
Okay, let me find it. Where is it? I'm 10, I got 1080.
If you look at
I'm looking,
AU 4275, you just get that general fund line item, right?
Yeah, it's just that class 27 there.
Transfers to OIT.
Yep.
And then general. So
okay. So the difference, say again what's going, because it's 137 here and 180,000 in the governor's. Do I need my ruler?
So the total line for OIT in the department's budget is $806,000. This item here would reduce it by $137,000 a year related to the funding of one of the OIT assigned positions.
would be relevant to know if it was filled or not. Perhaps
I can try
the
to get some
chairman-
more details on that.
Yeah,
And what's coming out of the office of the commissioner? The 601? Oh, is that the reduce in, a position is, position's lost, right? From You're going from 4 to 3, from 4 people to, well,
This, I think, had to do with their rent was.
Their
this,
rent?
This is in their class line transfers to plant and property. And I'm thinking that since we acquired that building, I think that has something to do with, there's more money budgeted in that transfer to plant and property than was necessary. So that's why this can be reduced. Yep.
and the last,
You're talking about the rent for that building? Yeah. So he paid far less when it wasn't owned by the state. He's a little upset about that. Not that it matters, he won't be around, but
and 1101.
I'm a little upset about that too.
And the last one would take out the dollars for the advanced placement program. Yeah.
sorry, the AP program would be zeroed out. Did you just say that?
I believe so. I'm just going to,
And does that mean that students would have to pay for their own AP classes? What does that mean?
I don't know. I don't want to speak out of turn on this. I'm not 100% sure the impact of that.
Representative Erf or Chairman Erf, did you have discussions with
Keith
the
is
DOE
fine.
when you were, making these suggestions?
Not in the kind of great depth that you're looking into it now. I just picked it up from what they'd put forth and moved on.
Well, I'd be glad for the weekend to look it over and also to try to reach out to a few people, although it is hard to do on the weekend. I hate to impose on people on the weekend.
This time of year, they probably are understanding.
So these are grants, not people, it looks like.
Correct. This is a contract line.
Yeah, I have a little concern, and I understand the situations there, but there are students who can't afford the fee for an AP class, and I think that it's a generosity. I think it's a moral thing to do to provide that for students who can't afford to take an AP class.
So I'd ask if for some reason you cannot get answers to your questions, could you just email me or text me or something over the weekend? And I'll see if I can get answers for
I'll
you.
keep you looped in as best I can.
Well, just know if you get the answers, that's fine. But if you can't, I'll try to help.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging all of us to try to go through some of these things to understand it.
I wish I knew more about those. I
Don't we
entirely
all?
on that. That is all I have for today.
Oh, really?
But while we're here, if anyone has any questions for me on anything,
Yeah, it's a good time.
Can we just go over the transit thing there? Because I totally agree about too many dedicated funds and too many strings attached. But the whole workforce issue around transportation is so critical. And people will lose their jobs. People will not be able to get to medical care. They will not get groceries, on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we can just work with Mickey on getting our amendment a little tightened up, and then, we'll just have the discussion in committee. That's fine. Thank you.
Is that it for everybody? And Representative McGuire, thank you so much for bearing with us today. I really appreciate it on a Friday afternoon. It's very kind of you.
That's a long day after Jelcar at 9, so we appreciate it.
In that case, I'm sorry you had to hang around for a few hours, but thank you for doing that. You're very helpful. And thank you, Mr. Landrigan, for all that you do. And, come on, I had it right that time. All right. With that, it's 11:45, and I will. I know what it is. 3:45. Did I say 11? 3:45 p.m. and we're adjourning.
Monday we're
Just be here at 8.
And just fair warning, I don't have any plans to take a lot of time on Monday and Tuesday, but obviously we have to finish on Tuesday. So if we have to be here late, unfortunately, we'll be here late.